rating companies, as you mentioned, something like a FICO score or a CIBIL. Now, this is all of us know that retail lending is now getting more scientific. I would say that there's no one size fits all where everybody gets a retail loan at the same price, same interest rates. If your credit score or FICO score is better or CIBIL score is better, you get a better interest rates on your housing loan or a car loan. And this is given, like when the complexity of the economy or the growth takes place, these things happen. More importantly, one dimension that all of us must understand that technology, we are completely changing. It is an information age completely. This is the age of iPad. People don't want to step out of the house. People want to go in the front of a computer and buy, sell, get retail stuff delivered in the homes. So I expect the securitization market or the capital markets also being influenced with this structural change, which is quite actively happening in India, where mutual funds are being bought on the web. Similarly, securities are being bought and sold on a demat form, and it's a matter of time before the banks also ride this entire wave where their advances are also in a securitized form to a big extent. Of course, there are certain pitfalls of completely converting a bank advances portfolio into a securitized form because of something called as a mark to market, which I believe very strongly is a man-made problem. If loans cannot be mark to market when there are economic assets, why should securities be mark to market? Aren't there a similarity in them? Loan is nothing but a kind of bond which is held to maturity. That you are letting it go, saying that don't mark to market. But the moment you call it a security, you say mark to market. These are all what I call man-made problems, and I would say that there are man-made solutions available to these aspects. The alternative rating market is a completely different market where we require some kind of real estate professionals or education professionals. So that is a slightly different skill set. Rating companies in their own wisdom also want to diversify their revenue streams and grow the market. And some of these drivers really push us to do all those things. But traditionally, the bond markets or the credit risk markets are going to be the drivers of the future demand for all this young talent which is sitting right in front of us.
So you mentioned 7,000 a year is what you expect. I would think it's actually more, because if you look at recent news item where SBI had a few, if I can remember, there was 15,000 or some odd PO openings, and they had like applications of from 18 lakh people.
Yeah, this is only for a bank perspective, but then if you take the wider array of players, I think the number is substantially bigger.
So 15,000 people and 18 lakh applications. So I would assume there is a larger disconnect between the kind of skill set you're looking for. Mr. Banga, would you elaborate on a bit?
I would not like to elaborate too much, because one thing is it points to the lack of opportunities people are having, so which is also not a good sign. But as far as Mr. Mokashi is saying, yeah, times are changing very fast, and therefore we also need to change and move with the times. And I'm just reminded of one since we are talking so much of papers and other things, from the other point, from let's say the entrepreneur's side, let us see. We were just doing a paper about a month back on what is good for an entrepreneur, a debt or an equity. So we analyzed it in different ways, number of ways we said, and ultimately, you come to the decision like, if he's willing to take a risk, he can, really change his capital structure or his funding structure accordingly. But all the same, I think new things, new methods, new practices being introduced in India, and knowledge is going to be supreme. Whichever way you are going to be there on the table, side of the entrepreneur or from the side of an analyst, there are many new opportunities which are arising. So I think a person who's talented, who's able to look through what side he is on the table and what is required from him with a focus, I think he is bound to succeed.
Well, to sum up, there was a recent report done by an organization called Aspiring Minds. It's called National Employability Report. And, the findings they have is that 50% of population in India, the graduate population or the workable population, is not ready or not employable. And those people who want to become analysts, 84% of those people don't have the right skill set. So it's always important to add on to your skill set by doing these specialized courses. And somebody told me saying that, 20 years back, if you were a BCom graduate, you were looked at in high regard. I mean, you were BCom graduate. But now it's more or less like a kindergarten. I mean, if you're a BCom graduate, it's like kindergarten. So unless you add on your skills and do specialized courses like this, you are not be able to differentiate yourself. With this, I'll open the floor for questions and have some questions from the audience. Can we have the mics here? Who is the bravest guy who is going to ask the first question? Was the discussion so tragic that you don't have any questions? All right, if there are no questions, I can start with the first one. Mr. Banga, if we were to talk about the right skill set, what are 2 or 3 of those skill sets which you think, apart from certifications like these, are required for people to get jobs? Like apart from technical knowledge, what kind of skill set would they need?
I think Vaibhav also pointed a finger at the skill set, that is understanding the management side. So for analyst, I think the management side, and let's come to the management side only. So when we were there and we were learning, we used to only say about 2 things: that the management of a company is so strong that it can mar a company and it can make it zero or equivalent to mud, or a management can also be like it can be a Midas and it can turn mud into gold. So management has a lot of power, but how good is the management and how are we going to evaluate it is something which is very, very important. So I think I also see some of the credit reports. Somehow I don't get that kind of insight into, how is the management, how efficient it is, how cohesive it is, how stable it is, and is it taking into account the interest of all the stakeholders. So those kind of answers I somehow don't get when I read a report which is coming out to me from a credit analyst. So one part, and of course now I think since New Companies Act also into place, and we have many other modes like a single man person can also be a company. The structure on which that company is built is again getting more and more complex. And understanding that structure and how it has, and how many companies are involved, how many are Indian, how many have been let's say coming from abroad, man of IS or something, very difficult kind of areas. Understanding all these things is also specialized knowledge. Complexity when you are the management structures and the company structure, complexities of a structure itself builds into some escape doors for the management to escape when there is a problem, or the problem will be created and the management will escape. So as an analyst, when you are going into all these things, I think these are areas where you should also concentrate apart from the other technical things.
Well, that's an interesting point. I would pose a different question to Mr. Mukashi. Mr. Mukashi, you have seen a lot of people, grow under you. You have hired a lot of people. People have grown to managerial rank and then maybe have changed their careers. Apart from the technical skills which people should always learn, those 3 or 4 things which one should have, irrespective of what qualification he has, grow in his.
I think the basic qualities I won't use the word skills, to succeed in any job is basically some sense of enthusiasm to learn different things. That you don't know is a reality today, but that you must know also is the realization you need to have. And a sort of a sense of self-confidence that yes, you will succeed, you will learn these things sooner or later. It's a matter of time that you learn this thing. This enthusiasm to learn different things and not say that this is not something which is not my job or that job. That ownership of a particular field, that yes, I'm going to be in this, is a self-realization that you need to have. I mean, nobody else can push down your throat. You have to be willing to learn this, or willingness or the drive should be there. Only you will get somewhere. And from a broader analysis kind of a thing that I have seen is that there is a term which is used often, paralysis, which is quite famous and quite eminently visible across the world, where page note, but you need only 1 page to make the conclusion. And that is something to know that whenever you are doing a particular analysis, It is meant for a decision. That decision does not require a 100-page analysis. It requires you to get the grasp of those 3 or 4 factors which will drive the decision. That ability to grasp those 3 or 4 quickly and taking the decision, whether 9 out of 10 times you'll still be right on that, is the quality that gradually you got to develop. It is not necessarily you got to join a credit rating company or a bank to learn those skills. You do it in day-to-day life. When you want to go from here to say, let's to the station, what is the quickest way to do it at the least cost? What is the fastest way? Without standing too much in the line. There are 2 or 3 choices, you've got to make the choice quickly. That's the kind of a judgment that you've got to take. You know that there's a traffic jam across a particular route. What route will it take to quickly reach home? That willingness to think before you move on the journey is very important. Again, I thought you will be wrong, you will still be stuck up in a traffic jam, but 9 out of 10 times you will make it. That kind of attitude is required in day-to-day, in whatever field you do, whether it's equities or ratings or whatever. And that skill is to my mind, has to be acquired. It doesn't come in automatically. You've got to make an effort towards it.
We'll stop time and optimize the process. Moving back to Vaibhav, a lot from people that they want to become analyst, equity or credit analyst. And the next question when I ask them, okay, why do you want to become an analyst? And most people have no answer. I mean, how much do you think that introspection is more important? I mean, a particular person might have those skill set which might be fit for, let's say, a sales or a trading, but he wants to become an analyst. What insights you will give to our young in terms of introspection and finding out whether they should actually go for becoming an analyst?
I think it again dovetails back to what Mr. Mukashi was saying, is that first of all, somebody who wants to become an analyst, I mean, it might sound rhetorical, but have an analytical bent of mind. So first is that if you like research, then you will be able to do a very good research. I mean, if your skill sets are inclined towards selling, marketing, I think that it's a different career. I mean, research, I would say, is 75% of a desk job. But when I'm saying desk job, it doesn't mean a money. You will be coming off data. What you need to do is pick and choose the right things from and make it information. And analysis is something which is like pulling information from 10 sources and then coming to the right conclusion and making that decision. So simplistically, you need to have enthusiasm, as Mr. Mukashi pointed out. I would say passion to do research, passion to turn a lot of data into a meaningful conclusion. And what I would say is that you should have a very keen eye for detail, because I mean, you can do a very, very holistic, fuzzy kind of to back and write 50 pages of data, but that's not going to be helpful. You need to analyze, you need to come out with conclusions saying that you need to be clear in your mind saying that why are you doing this analysis, what is the objective, and whether the conclusions I'm coming with are solving or meeting that purpose with which you are coming. So if you not have that inclination of analyzing a lot of data, getting into the details and coming out with solutions, you feel the marketing job more than analysis is not something for you. But if you want, if you're very keen and you know with what purpose you are doing the analysis, then I think, I mean, this is for a broad analysis perspective, but you have to, you want to be a credit analyst or an equity analyst. I think the skill sets, the basic skill sets required for a credit analyst, analysts are say 80% same. But then you branch out, you say that I am more inclined in the debt markets, I am more inclined to look at what the probability of default of this bond would look like. I'm more inclined to look at the ratios with the perspective of analyzing how the credit markets will pan out. You would become a credit analyst then.
Well, I would agree. I mean, when I was working with the trading desk, we only had 2 or 3 days to go through the entire prospectus of 500 pages and the company website and annual reports and come out with a single email with 3 positives and 3 negatives to decide whether we'll be participating in that deal or not. I'll pose a different question to Dinesh. Dinesh, you are a fund manager. You worked as an analyst with Fidelity as well. How do you think that a day of a fund manager pans out in a credit kind of a role?
I think the biggest difference is more from the trading perspective. So when you're analyst, I think you're less concerned about the day-to-day fluctuations in market prices. So you don't really care whether like the yield curve So for example, bonds, like whether the yield went up from 8.5 to 8.6, or whether the price went from 99 to 98, you don't care as much about that. You care much more about, okay, like let me look at this company, let me really try to understand what are the various dynamics affecting that company. And actually from that perspective, you can afford to have a relatively longer term horizon, because you're really thinking about the fundamental creditworthiness of a borrower, and normally they don't change on a day-to-day basis, right? Like as a fund manager, the difference is that you are like fairly or unfairly, you have to have a shorter horizon, in the sense that essentially you have a relative performance, you have performance against the benchmark. So you do care about the fluctuations in market prices. So you have to be like much more sort of like short-term oriented as well, where you are really grasping the sort of like headline news of the day, or you need to be aware of like the market moving sort of news, and that so the trading aspect, where you're really concerned about market price fluctuations, that's the biggest difference. But apart from that, I feel that at least in the organization where I work in, across both the equity and the debt side, what you find is that like fund managers essentially remain analysts at heart, right? Because like this is what you sort of signed up for. Like you like solving puzzles. So you really like sort of like thinking about the various moving parts, and so from that perspective, like even as a fund manager, you're always sort of like thinking about these companies. You're really thinking about, okay, does it really make sense for me to buy this company, or does it make sense for me to buy some other company? And from that perspective, like while obviously you're distracted with the sort of fluctuation market prices, at the end of the day, you're still sort of like thinking about these companies, thinking about, okay, like which one is going to do better in the future, or like which one is a more creditworthy name to own. So you do think about all that, but you probably like lever the analyst expertise as well, because the analyst is often like much more like involved on a sort of like day-to-day basis. So sometimes you depend on the analyst to sort of like provide you more like up-to-date information on those companies. So that is his market price aspect. But otherwise, in my opinion, once an analyst, always an analyst. You're always going to sort of like think, you're going to keep thinking about these companies. You're going to keep thinking about like what's happening with these companies, and you just can't avoid it basically.
Well, irrespective of whether you are an analyst or fund manager, at the end of the day, it's the investor's money which is at stake. So all my friends who like Sudoku, please mention it in your resume, because problem solving attitude is what is required to get a credit analyst role. With this, I'll offer an opportunity to the panelists to ask questions to each other if they may like. No questions?
I think if any of the students,
Okay, we have two. So can we offer the mic, please? Now three. So encourage quite a few.
Hello. Yeah. So I'm into the teaching side, and I've been an investment banker myself into the private equity side of it. Coming from the student side, so what are the kind of things which we have observed is one is the kind of things they learn while they are learning in colleges and everything. The balance sheets and the P&L are still in lakhs and everything, because the books have not, or the academic has not gone out and made books in crores and everything. And that's the reason, one again, I feel there is a, there is a gap which is there always, what is reality and what is there in the books which we learn. So if they want to improve themselves, or they want to understand more about what is happening in the financial market and everything, how should they keep updated with everything which is happening in the market right now, whether reading newspapers, certain magazines, or there is some internship which is available in small financial companies or something? What could be the way out for them to actually understand more in detail what about the real market is happening in?
So I'll quickly add a perspective to what you said, Priyesh. The only thing as a student or as a professional which you can do is convert your intangible skill set into tangible. It could be through, by doing projects on your own. Well, summer internship is not a birthright for MBAs only. So you can also do internship. You can do your own projects. You can actually write research reports and get mentored with someone who can guide you in terms of, how a research report should look like. Consider an example. If you come to me directly and say that, can you tell me how to do an equity research report? I'll say I don't have time. But you come up with the equity research report and tell me what more I can do with this, I'll certainly be, trying to guide you. I'll offer an opportunity to other panelists to add on what the question is.
I'll say that, for example, a BCom program, it has its own time that students have to give it. But end of the day, please understand that these are 3 precious years of your life that you're putting into the BCom program. And after you come out of it, if you're not worth anything, it's a time 3 precious years wasted. So please always keep it at the back of the mind that you are running through 3 years, you will get the stamp of a VCOM, but you are worth nothing. That should not happen. So it is for you to realize that I like these things. Let me do a little bit of extra work in these areas which I enjoy doing it. And don't exam passing or degree is one approach for it, way of looking at it. But don't do everything for exam passing only. Don't, in a film called Three Idiots, there is a dialogue, Kabil bano, Kamyabi tumhare kadam chume bhi. I think that kind of attitude is required. Don't do anything for that stamp. Degree is not worthless piece of paper if there is no fundamental knowledge. You can be BCom, but you will be unemployable. So don't get into the state. So it is driven by your own thought process. That ये 3 साल में से मुझे कुछ तो सीख के निकलने का है. Whether the college teaches me or not, I will make sure I'm learning. I'm going to the websites, I'm going to the video lectures, I'll ask questions, I'll meet people all of the sitting, harass them, ask questions to the teachers. I will learn, that's all. Because today there are too many students in the colleges, it is not possible to give tuition-like attention to the students. But if you decide, if you have the will, nobody can stop you from using and getting some value in the 3 years that is there.
I think just to add to it, I think reading newspapers or financial journals is a must in today's life. I mean, there's no alternative to it, and if you're not already doing it, I think it's about time you start doing it. But just reading is not enough, because I think if you are an analyst or if you want to be an analyst, I think you should try to imbibe, or you should try to assimilate what you are reading, and you should try to question. I mean, at this stage you will not understand everything what is coming in economic times, right? But the first start, the start to the learning is when you start questioning, saying that, oh, I do not understand this. Let me try and figure out, or let me try and understand what this is. Even if you get 10% of those questions which come to your mind solved in the next 15 days, you have taken a step up. So I think one of the points which I maybe missed out is the requirement for an analyst is the ability to question and reason, right? And I mean, there is a vast area of knowledge in front of you. I mean, your current affairs, your newspapers which you come, or you look at the Bloomberg websites or the Google Finance website, and look at the international developments, look at the developments which are happening in the economy in India, and try to start questioning, saying that, do I understand at least what is happening? If not, then let me try and understand it. So that's the first step towards development. And I think when we interview people for the jobs, I think one of the things which is an essential for a credit analyst is his knowledge about the current affairs. Because if he does not know current affairs, maybe on more on the financial side, but if he doesn't know current affairs and he doesn't know what's happening in the current market, if he doesn't know what's happening in the current market, then probably he doesn't have the aptitude or the attitude or both to be an analyst. So I think that would be my
Thank you, Weber, for that perspective.
Yeah,
We'll move on to the next question over there.
Hello, sir. I would like to ask you that since our first year of graduation, our thinking and our teaching is focused towards more of the equity side. And now, since we are more interested towards the debt side, how can we change our thinking towards debt and not that focusing that much on the equity side, because our thinking has always been on the equity side, that it will move up, and as sir rightly pointed out, debt markets or the credit analyst basically thinks of what is the worst come situation a particular thing can have. So how can we focus our shift of thinking?
Well, I would add only 2 points before I let my panelists answer it. One is what Weber said, is start asking questions. And second is think about the downside, as Mr. Mukashi said. I would ask Mr. Banga to add if you can help the gentleman.
No, I think, very, very simple answer, because, right now 2 questions we are just preaching. There's nothing more to do. And we are quite good at preaching that. At least you will all, agree with us. See, we all change jobs. And I was in a very different kind of an assignment 1 year back, and I'm at the exactly opposite end of the same pole today. Okay, I can't hang on to my past to do my present. When I'm going into my past, I'm going to sacrifice my efficiency or part of my present. You have to get out of this. All of us In fact, I am in the same organization, but of course I've handled different assignments. And whatever I have done is done, it's past, it's history. You can't hang on to history. So that part kindly be a little, I will say, you have to be a little cruel to yourself, that you have to forget the history to do a good present. That is all I will say. And number two is, I think since you are all young, and in real life, we all say, I also have children and they also are working, and it's just because I'm preaching, so it's good time to preach also. Like you go into a job and then we say, after 6 months we are getting bored, and it's the same thing, equities or bonds or what debts or something, same thing. And I've found people also who are doing the analyst part, and they say, sir, kya company mein lage hain? 2 years I'm only analyzing the balance sheets, I'm not doing anything. Let me be very, very honest with you. In all organizations, repetition is a way of life. In fact, specialization comes through repetition only. All of us repeat the same thing for years, and then probably still feel that, maybe we are still lacking in some. But repetition will be part of your professional job. So don't try to run away from it, and don't spoil your present hanging on to some history.
Well, to sum up, be patient and try to move out of your comfort zone. That's the two words which you should.
I would
think
also
about.
like to, excuse me, so sorry to disturb you, but I would also like to ask that I'm pursuing my MMS Finance from Mumbai University. Sir, this MMS Finance guys have been tagged to be an equity analyst, because they are generally, once you complete your MBA, majority of us or we have been tagged as equity analysts. So, as Banga sir actually pointed out, I have to get out of that mold, but what about that tag which we have been placed on? So,
Well, it's up to you if you accept the tag or not.
It can be, it can be a strong point also. But don't try to, spoil your present by hanging on to that tag.
I mean, the fact of the matter is that, so let's say you essentially want to prove that you're interested in fixed income, right? Yes. So how do you go about proving it? Let's say you're really clear that you're first of all, why are you clear that you like debt? So then the starting question is that what have you learned about debt so far that has essentially made you interested in wanting to be a credit analyst? Do you really essentially looking at for example, let's say if you are purely focused on the treasury side, where you have treasury, right? Are you really aware of yield movements? Are you really aware of what is happening from an interest rate perspective? What RBI is doing? Do you really like doing that? So the basic question is what have you learned so far, or what have you done so far that makes you feel that you want to be on the debt side? So if let's say you come for an interview, right, and you say that, oh, I'm interested in the debt market. The basic question, okay, what do you know about debt market? So let's say you can either say that, oh, I'm interested in credit analysis, or you can say that I'm interested in this macroeconomic analysis, which is very helpful on the debt side, right? Then someone will start asking you detailed questions. Okay, do you really understand the RBI policies? What is the RBI policy repo rate right now? So at least if you are aware of the basic data, and if you have a supporting sort of thesis behind your assertion, then I don't think anybody cares whether you have a equity tag or whatever. At the end of the day, people are going to ask you questions. Yeah? You come for an interview, people are going to ask you relevant questions. You answer them, people are going to be satisfied. Personally for me, when I joined Fidelity, I didn't have any finance degree. So basically my background was all in engineering, right? And from that perspective, they should have immediately dismissed me, saying that, oh, you have no finance background. What the heck are you trying to do here? But that's not how it goes, right? They still give you an opportunity. So at the interview, they essentially ask you to prove that you're interested in whatever job that you're essentially signing up for. And there, if you can prove to them that regardless of whatever my degree is, that I'm genuinely interested in this, then people will go for you. So this tag, in my opinion, I really don't think that it matters as much as you might think. Just prove to the organization that you really have a genuine interest in whatever you are saying that you want to do. And I think they'll go for it.
Just do a couple of academic projects on debt markets, right? I mean, put them on your CV. I think the person who
Can you
reads your
highlight some projects, because I've written some articles, but I've not done any projects as such on debt markets.
You speak to your finance prof.
Thank you, sir.
I guess we can take your question.
Just one add. See this. You say that you are billed as equity analyst. Now, for the same project that you're doing in a typical MMS program has several small research project submission opportunities.
Yes, sir.
The same research project can be done from a debt perspective and submitted. Nobody prevents you from doing that. I mean, you can create a culture within your own campus that let's all have 50% debt projects, or some of them debt projects and some of them equity projects, and let's contradict as to what is different about it. So whatever company you are analyzing, let's analyze from an equity and a debt perspective, and then figure out what are the differences, how they can be understood. So this could be an interesting kind of exposition which can be introduced in the schools which which you initiate, because in an MBA school typically students have a bigger role to play in terms of what composition of analysis or activities take place. So these activities, there could be a debt analyst competition introduced, just like an equity analyst competition. Your college could be the first one to do it.
Well, there was a question on this side. I would let the gentleman ask his question.
Yeah, good afternoon. Sir, we have heard that banks are under this credit squeeze. So whether it is regarded to liquidity issues or it is more like NPA management, what these people are doing. And also one more thing, if you can throw some light on what is FDI investments and whether PSUs would be taking it forward or something.
You are asking me a very political question. I would rather not answer it. But anyway, I can only tell you that there is no credit squeeze, and banks are very willing to fund all good projects.
So you asked a political question, he has given a... Next question, there was a question over there.
Thanks, sir. Regarding this foreign investments, whether PSU banks would be moving it in a particular direction over that? Any particular idea on something?
PSU banks moving for
foreign investments in banks, means taking foreign funds into investments for banks?
No, why?
That is for the parliament to decide, I think so. That's best left to the parliament.
See, you have limits. Right now we are almost, at the maximum of limits. We don't take. Ultimately, it is a passage of time. What will happen? We'll come to that.
Thank you.
So the question over there.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm right now pursuing I'm in my last year TY Accounting and Finance. So I just wanted to ask that, can you give me guidelines on how can I increase my exposure to the stock market in which books or which article should I refer, and how can I understand the actual mechanic that is going on behind the stock operations?
Well, I'll answer your question in 5 tangible steps which you can follow. One, obviously, we all discussed that convert your intangibles into tangibles by start doing projects. And if you just Google out the word equity in Google, I'm sure you'll get tons of books on equity research, and there are no secrets. These are not Bhargu Sahita, which are not available anymore. These are available widely. Second, obviously, look for a mentor who can help you guide on the same. Third is, stock your mental toolkit by reading articles, current affairs, as Weber. Introspect on why you want to learn about equity. Why is it that only equity? Why not debt? Why not forex? Why not commodities?
Same applicable for debt, not only equity as well as debt.
And the last is be patient. Follow these steps and be patient. We had a question on this side. Was there a question? Over there, the lady over there.
Good afternoon, sir. Actually, I want to ask that since 3 years we are I'm from BEF, TY BEF last year, and I want to ask that since 3 years we are doing like practical sums and all that accounting ratios, and like sir said, but in practical life we are not implementing or that ratios or that practical knowledge is not applicable in practical life. So my question is that isn't it necessary to conclude this syllabus in our, means according to the university, or according to me, that university should conclude this type of syllabus in books and all? Because he knows about this side of CCRA and CPF and all that. So if you are coming to these seminars, and if our colleges are asked to come, only by this only we are coming to know that this type of courses are available in the market.
Well, if I understand your question correctly, one is there's a difference between the practical sum which you do in textbook and the practical analysis which they talked about. So even if you learned ratio analysis, talking a balancing ratio on your own. With respect to your college taking initiative, we would love to meet with your college and explain them the entire process if that's the case.
But fundamentally speaking, I think there's always going to be a friction between academia and industry, right? And this is across every discipline. And part of the challenge is that while for the fact that real world is very different from what you read in books, at the same time, it also goes without saying that you also need some solid fundamentals. Like for example, while I can tell you that right now, like the numbers that you create from an Excel sheet may not be enough. But at the same time, I will also tell you that you better know like these kind of like those, and you better know like what balance sheet analysis actually means. So from that perspective, like you're always going to have this sort of friction between like theory and sort of like practice. Now, if someone sort of like completely moves away from theory and says that, okay, I'm just going to teach you real world problems or whatever, if you have some solid theoretical fundamentals, it's not really going to work out. And so you need some institution to sort of like help you like get that theoretical framework. And then depending on whether you're actually interested, so the way I think about it is a generalist versus specialist, right? Like a lot of these institutions are essentially generalists in nature. So where they teach you theoretical fundamentals, they teach you sort of like basics. And then once you are clear that you want to sort of like go into a particular field and you want to learn more about that field, then you start thinking about these vocational like certificates, or you start thinking about these specialized programs that will help you sort of like gear up for the actual practical challenges. So I think it's always you can't really like have everything in just one institution, because then that will get very messy. So like colleges, theoretical fundamentals, you say that you're really interested in financial market, then you do financial markets related certification on top of that.
All right, we have time for one more question.
Yeah. Hi.
If there are any.
I wanted to know, will we get internship opportunity after doing this course?
Well, yes and no. Yes, as in, of course, there are opportunities which are available in the market.
Okay, and
no, as in, even if you were a graduate from Harvard, you can't expect people to come and knock on your door saying that because you are from Harvard, please join us. So you'll have to try on your own. Obviously, there are opportunities that are available, but it's no guaranteed product. Let me put it this way. We always comes with warranty, no guarantee.
Yeah. Should we have proper equity knowledge, equity knowledge is must for going for this profile or something like that?
I would let Mr. Mukashi answer this one.
One thing I can assure many of the students here, that as a company, rating company, I can assure you that we will definitely give preferential treatment to people with this qualification when they come for a job. That I can assure you, because we value the skill set that are acquired and we know that there is a lacuna. So somebody who's just done a BCom and then something like this, obviously he gets a little bit of preferential treatment. Obviously he has to fare in the interview and all, and we would definitely encourage people to acquire such kind of qualifications. Of course, this is one, there are CFAs, there is GARP and whatnot, but as a rating, rating company, the core competency, 70-80% work revolves around rating. And we would definitely encourage, or we would, if there is if there are 10 people who are applying for a job and 2 are with the CCRA, I would rather give a preferential treatment to such qualifications. I would straight away say that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the wonderful questions, and thank you, panelists. I would hand over the floor to Neha for our book launch.